Booking.com, we know how to travel.
Good evening, everyone. Kia ora, I am Michael. I am the vicar here at St. Christopher's. Now, this is a political gathering. I quote Winston Churchill, democracy is a horrible form of government. We just don't have anything better. But right now you're in my house, so we're going to treat each other well because you're in my house, or I turn on the lightning machine. Just kidding. But welcome, Madam Mayor, and all of the councillors and candidates. I won't try to name you because I will miss someone and be eternally in the offense column. But thank you for being here, and thank you everyone for coming, and who cares? I made a statement inviting everyone on our social media platforms today that there are too many important things in our community to not pay attention. And local elections are always so poorly attended, but there's too many very important issues, and you just had to wake up this morning and hear our mayor being interviewed on yet another hot topic to know. And so I hope that you will pay attention and at the appropriate time ask respectful, good questions. I'm still learning to do that myself. The ones that aren't baited. But I hope that you will enjoy this evening. We are very pleased to host it for our community. The quick announcements that you need to know. In an emergency, everybody tries to run out the door they came in. But you're fortunate. Here's where flight attendant training. There's one here, and there's one over here in that window box. There's one back by the sound desk, and there's one back in the corner there, as well as the main doors. If you need to move a little slower, let everyone else leave, and then my people will help you get out very quickly and safely. And if we move out towards this side of the car park, if we did have to go out. As you can tell by the construction of the building, you'll be safe if that unexpected event happened. There are facilities on the left going out here, and if you need anything, if you talk to any of my crew in the back there, they'll be glad to make sure that happens. I think in light of this week, it would be appropriate if we took a moment to remember Her Majesty the Queen and appreciate the great efforts of our King and the family in this hard time across the United Kingdom, here in the realm of New Zealand and our other sister realms and Commonwealth countries. So if you would join me in that silence. Thank you. If you'd be seated. I want to be turning it over to your masters of ceremony, and I look forward to this lively discussion. Thank you for coming.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome and thank you all for being here. I am here on behalf of the Avonhead Community Group. My name is Nicola McCormick, and I will be the presenter and MC for the first part of today's meeting. We welcome our current Mayor of Christchurch, Leanne Dalziel, and our local candidates. I can also see Ralph Munsey sitting over there. Ralph is the leader of the Opportunities Party in New Zealand and will be a candidate for Ilam constituency in the next parliamentary election. We welcome you too. The main purpose of this public meeting is to introduce our local Waimairi and mayoral candidates, but also to give you a brief update from the last public meeting held on April the 26th, 2022. The meeting will be divided into two parts. In the first part, I will talk very briefly about the Avonhead Community Group, who we are and what we do, and I will provide a brief update from the last public meeting. We will then move on to thank our Mayor, Leanne Dalziel, for her service, not only to our city, but also to our community, and invite her to say a few words. In the latter part of the meeting, we will then invite all the candidates to address the audience. At the end of this meeting, there will be time for questions from the audience for the candidates. The Avonhead Community Group was formed in 2012 and incorporated in 2013. We are a neutral and non-political residents organisation and are entirely voluntary. Many of you here today will remember that at our last public meeting in April, we discussed three issues: Three Waters reform, housing intensification, and the removal of minimum car park requirements from new developments. The consensus among the audience was clear. Three Waters reform should be scrapped, Christchurch should be excluded from the housing intensification rule, and minimum car park requirements should remain. Based on the consensus at the meeting, we resolved to write to the government asking for these changes. We wrote to the Prime Minister's office in May. Does anyone want to guess the Prime Minister's response, the government's response? Well, our letters got shifted from one department to another. We got a response on Three Waters from Minister Nanaia Mahuta, which essentially just copied and pasted sections of the government's bill on why Three Waters reform is such a great idea. We have never received a substantial response to our letter on housing intensification and parking requirements. So in brief, the government has done absolutely nothing in response to our letters. We stand to lose democratic control over our local assets and precious local amenities. Moving on to the next part, I would like tonight to welcome as our guest of honour, Mayor Leanne Dalziel. I'm just going to say a few words. The Avonhead Community Group has enjoyed a close relationship with the Mayor over her 3 terms. And we want to take this opportunity to thank her for her service to the city and for her support to our community. The promise that Mayor Dalziel gave us when we met her in 2013 was that she would put aside her parliamentary allegiance and work with the community as a completely neutral, independent mayor. To this day as mayor, she has kept her word. Mayor Dalziel has stood beside us when we were fighting against the council's proposal to rezone 35 hectares of rural land, the NWRA3, to industry in Hawthornden Road. This proposal had been pushed through without consulting the affected public. These town planners were bringing industry to our doorstep. Thanks to the Mayor's support, we were able to halt that rezoning and leave it remaining as rural to date. Since then, the Mayor has continued to consult and support us and proactively sought our submissions for every draft long-term plan for Christchurch. Our Mayor was also behind the initiation of setting up the Friends of the Avonhead Cemetery to work in partnership with the council and supported the name change from Avonhead Park Cemetery to Avonhead Memorial Cemetery. We are grateful to the Mayor for when we as a community group have asked the Mayor for her support, we have always received it. I would now like to invite Mayor Leanne Dalziel to the stage to say a few words.
Kia ora koutou katoa. Oh, I'm not sure if that's on. Is it on? Yes? Thank you very much, Nicola, for that lovely introduction, and I really appreciate being invited here just to say a few words. I would like to acknowledge all of my council colleagues and candidates for the local government elections who are here tonight, I actually know what it's like to be in your shoes, and I'm extremely happy that I've chosen not to be in those shoes ever again. But what I want to do is acknowledge and thank the Avonhead Community Group for being the voice of your community and helping to guide me on issues that matter to our city. Not just matter to Avonhead, but actually what matters to our city. As I come to the end of my last mayoral term, I wanted to acknowledge that this is where I started. I was determined to step back from my political role right from the start. I have never endorsed any Labour Party candidates, and I have represented the city fairly and with an even hand. That's how I feel that I can respond to the request that was made of me at the time. My first slogan was One City Together, and that was the East-West divide post the earthquakes. It was really about coming together as one city. And latterly, Best for Christchurch. Not best for Labour, not best for National, not best for developers over residents, not best for one group over another, but best for Christchurch overall. And I think that has been about finding the point at which you can strike the right balance, because things are never quite as they seem when you begin to investigate them. I want to acknowledge 3 councillors who I credit with the success that I've had in my time as mayor. Raf Manji, who I didn't know was going to be here tonight, but I'm thrilled that he is here to hear me say this. I asked him to run for council because of his financial skills, and I will be forever grateful to him for doing so. I don't think that I could have faced the $400 million hole that we found in the council's budget when we arrived without his expertise. And quite frankly, I don't think that we would have got the settlement that we were finally able to achieve 2 years later with the insurance settlement that this city managed to obtain. We were really stuck between a rock and a hard place when we arrived at the council, but I honestly believe that we would not have been able to put so much right in the foundational sense without Raf Manji at my side. So thank you, Raf. I'm glad I get to say that in front of you. I also wanted to acknowledge Vicky Buck. She had been the mayor for several years before, and I asked her if she would run, and one of the reasons that I did was that I've got a really strong central government background. I've been a cabinet minister with a range of portfolios. How much better would it be if I had somebody from local government at my side, but more importantly, someone who'd held the position of mayor? I knew that I could rely on her, and I knew that I could trust her. I thought that we would make a good team, and we did. She stood at my side the first term as the deputy mayor, and then taking up a role around sustainability and community resilience, which was an extremely powerful role, especially addressing important issues like climate change. So Vicky Buck was the second one. And thirdly, Andrew Turner, who stepped up as deputy mayor and proved to be utterly reliable, because sometimes a mayor can't attend things, either there's a clash, or there's an absence, an unavoidable absence, or there's illness. And so he was able to step in at short notice, no matter what it was, whether it was a diplomatic visit, citizenship ceremonies, presenting at conferences, visiting our sister city of Adelaide at 2 days' notice when I had the flu back in June. And on Sunday week, he will be welcoming people to the Transitional Cathedral to honour the memory of the late Queen Elizabeth II. And I've demonstrated this just to show that the roles of a mayor are many and varied, and the deputy mayor's role is to step in when called upon to do so, and I wanted to acknowledge Andrew for that as well. I would acknowledge others and will do so before I finish, but I wanted to demonstrate to you that I've actually sought to balance my strengths with the strengths of others. The 9 years of my mayoral term has been bookended by the government's earthquake recovery regime and the global pandemic. So earthquake recovery one end, pandemic at the other. In between, I've had to provide leadership through times of crisis, flooding, the Port Hills fire, and the tragedy of the mosque terrorist attacks. Each have required a different skill set, and each, to be blunt, has taken its toll. Before I started as mayor, I asked the previous mayor if he would send an expression of interest to the Rockefeller Foundation for consideration for their 100 Resilient Cities project, and he agreed to do so. We were successful in making the first cut, so the first thing that I did as a brand new mayor was to apply to the Rockefeller Foundation to become part of the 100 Resilient Cities network. And that meant that we had access to a global network that could support us to build resilience to whatever lay ahead. Now, I know that resilience is a despised word in Christchurch, largely because a lot of people kept coming here and saying, oh gosh, you're all so resilient, look what you've gone through. But we didn't feel very resilient. Unsettled EQC and insurance claims, damaged infrastructure, shattered nerves, changes in schools, communities gone, disrupted lives. That's not the stuff that resilience is made of. And this is the message that I guess I have for you, is that community resilience comes from community groups like your own, like the Avonhead Community Group. Community groups who not only have a sense of belonging, but who have a voice that is listened to. Helping people access the information they need, like tonight, and enabling them to take control of their own future. That's what resilience is all about. The ability to respond in the face of adversity, that's a big part of it for sure, but so is the ability to adapt in the face of change and to co-create a new future, as we sought to do so with the amazing Share an Idea campaign that occurred before I was the mayor. What I'm most proud of is when a community group comes to council and asks us not to do something for them, but to help them do something for themselves. The South Brighton Community Hub is the most recent, but there are many others. The Littleton Project, the Aranui Community Trust, the Governor's Bay Jetty Trust. We sold them the jetty for $1 and they'll be passing it back when it's fully repaired. The list goes on. And you are a model community group. Never forget this, unique from the others due to your relationship with the airport company. I was so sorry to see Malcolm Johns announce that he is stepping down from this role. He has been a tremendous leader and we have been extremely lucky to have him. But in saying this, I know that he will have built capability around him and the company will go from strength to strength, as I hope will your relationship with the airport. Your model enables you to raise issues directly with the airport, but it also means that you could provide solid evidence in front of the independent hearings panel that considered the replacement district plan. Not every community could do that as well as you have, and I think you should remember that. The other aspect of the earthquake recovery was the unprecedented involvement of the government, which had set up a government department to run the city's recovery. You'll remember the Canterbury Earthquake Recovery Authority, or CERA as it became known. If you had wanted to build a city's resilience to take on challenges, then this is the last thing you would do, is take away all of the council's power and give it to a government department. Having a government department tightly controlled by a minister actually disempowered the city instead of strengthening it. However, no one could say I didn't work hard to resolve the issues with the government of the day. I just couldn't get the cut through that the city needed at the time, and RAF's ability to negotiate a city deal was stymied every step of the way, he will recall. Just reflecting on all the crises that came between the earthquake and COVID, the flooding occurred within months of being elected the first time. However, the setting up of a mayoral task force on flooding was the best response. It has stood us in good stead as we build resilience to future flooding events. The Port Hills fires reminded us of the importance of those residential areas in close proximity to a forest. The urban-rural divide is not just about reverse sensitivities, as it is with quarries. It is about knowing how to keep your property protected against such possibilities. And then the terror attacks on our city's mosques remains forever etched in my memory, not only for the measurable loss imposed on our Muslim community, but for the extraordinary response to the incredible leadership of the community leaders and the Prime Minister. This became a beacon of light that shone across the world as hundreds of thousands of people gathered in solidarity with Muslim communities everywhere. The other bookcase is COVID-19 and all that this has done to shake our collective sense of resilience as a city. It has had an impact on my last term. However, I'm proud of my role in these times. Just before COVID struck, I travelled to Japan to make our city's apology for the deaths of those who died or were injured as a result of the collapse of the CTV and the unreinforced masonry buildings during the earthquake. This was something that only I could do in a way that was meaningful to the families. I have been absolutely honoured to be the mayor of this city, the city where I was born and have lived all my life. There is much more than I know about the city than I did before I was the mayor. Getting to know the Avonhead Community Group has been a real treasure to me. My grandparents lived on Merrin Street when they shifted here from Dunedin, so I have many happy memories of this area. And I hope that there is some way that I can stay connected in the future. But thank you once more for all of your support and for all your guidance and wisdom. Tēnā koutou katoa.
I'm just asking Trish Paris, on behalf of the Avonhead Community Group, to present these flowers to Mayor Leanne Dalziel to formally acknowledge her time as mayor. Thank you very much, and we wish you all the best in your next endeavours. I will now hand you over to Eileen and Dwayne, who will take over the MC duty for the remainder of the night.
Good evening. Now we're on to the second half of the evening. Each candidate will be called up and given 5 to 7 minutes to speak. They will let us, the voters, know who they are, what they stand for, and the impact that they will each bring to their new roles upon election. We ask that you hold a respectful silence while they speak, and the bell will ding once you've reached the 5-minute mark so that you can wind down. Those standing for election to the council will speak first, and then the community board members, and then we'll call for questions from those. So it's my pleasure to call forward and introduce Laylee Samuels, who is standing for election to both the council and the community board. Thanks, Laylee.
I know that lots of people don't know me. This is a new face for the city. But I'm living in the city for the last 17 years, 18 years. This time, I decided to run for the councillor and also...
Can you speak up?
Okay. Tēnā koutou katoa. Good evening. Konbanwa. Ni hao. Namaste. First of all, thank you for the organizers, fellow participants, and my wonderful audience. It is nice to see so many familiar faces today. Before I start, I want to introduce my family. my wonderful husband, Babu Kuti, 2 adult children, daughters Merila and my son Milin. We are here in New Zealand for the last 20 plus years. I was a scientist by profession with a PhD in chemistry, and my husband is also a scientist by profession with a PhD in environmental science. My daughter is a doctor, and my son is graduating double degree this year. My children grew up in Avonhead, studied in Westburn School, Cobham School, and also St. Andrews College. I came to New Zealand as an overseas recruit to establish chemical metrology, which was a national program under national measurement standards. My work was not confined to Christchurch. I visited almost all city councils and regional councils in New Zealand to learn their programs like water and wastewater treatment and also different other issues. I organized strategic planning sessions and involved all users and providers of the services, regulators, and ministries to identify and solve the problems including water quality, food safety, contaminants, adulterants, and so on. That is the reason why I am interested to stand for the City Council election this time. My experience includes chairing CTAC, an international organization in my field of 4 years, an advisory member of IAN's Professional Advisory Committee for 14 years, and contributed to various ISO committees. After 30 years of my science life, I thought it is time to share my knowledge to the wider community and provide a different voice and representation at the council level. You could see my colorful billboards looking at you from different places in the Waimairi ward. Mother Teresa once said, "We fear the future because we are wasting today." Our earth has been crying for years for help. Like a child, it started showing its tantrum towards us to listen and learn. Today, I am standing here as a new candidate for the City Council and Community Board for Waimairi Ward, seeking a change from the existing norms of the Council. More than any time, we need scientific and evidence-based input at the decision-making table. I do not have any affiliation with politics or any alignment with any of the mayoral candidates here. I am standing as an independent candidate to work with the community and public and address their needs, and I am a very approachable person. For the last 20 years, our Christchurch population increased to 10%. That's about 50,000 extra people living in the city. Our infrastructure needs to be developed: housing, transportations, hospital beds, schools, etc. As a city, we need user-friendly cycle path, but we cannot ignore our road users as well. Global warming wouldn't stop by creating wider cycle paths. Education, encouragement, and motivation are necessary. City needs to cater for everyone, not only for youngsters, that's only for older people as well. Mental health and well-being is also important. We need to encourage electric cars, scooters, buses, and light rails to reduce carbon footprints. Also need proper affordable parking spaces to park our scooters and cars. We cannot ignore that as well. How many of you allow your children to bike to school? Probably it is because of safety you don't allow. We need to create safe cycle paths to our children to attend schools and parents to work with peace of mind. We need to control boy racers speeding in our vicinities. We need to control our young offenders, safer community, proper footpaths. We need to get our roads cleaned, and additional hospital parking is an essential investment. We need better treatment from the council. Do you think you are getting a proper return of your rate you are paying for? Rates are increasing year by year. Salary is not increasing that much. Pension is not increasing that much. We need to keep our rates down by limiting unnecessary council spending on big projects. If I am elected, I will involve community and neighborhood before making decisions and have their proper input in decision making. I will collaborate with the younger generation and listen to their ideas to help prepare the city for their future. I want to promote multiculturalism and equal opportunities for everyone. I have a truly multicultural background. I was born, brought up, and educated in India, and lived in Japan for more than 10 years, and lived in USA for a year as well. I understand various cultures. I am fluent in Japanese, my mother tongue Malayalam, and also English, and understand a few other languages as well. I wish to promote clean transport and initiate sustainable re-industrialization and timely disaster risk reduction and management. Invest more on public transport and organize training programs to educate public to reduce carbon footprints, waste reduction and sustainability, and also start initiatives from school level to minimize waste and recycle. My community involvement did not come from learning from a degree course. It is in my blood. I grew up in a house where my father was a community hero. I am working with the Church St. Christopher's to help the community in various ways. With my husband, we help our Indian community to settle down in Christchurch, give company until they find their own friendship circle, and help with all other pastoral care. Finally, I will work with the community, volunteer groups, and schools to address local community needs, especially focusing on implementing a multi-sectoral anti-poverty program at schools, along with the central government initiatives. I want to finish my speech with a quote. If we can conquer space, we can conquer childhood hunger. Buzz Aldrin.
Thank you, Layli. Next, I'd like to introduce Kevin List, who is also standing both for the Council and for the Community Board. Thanks, Kevin.
Kia ora everyone. Good news, I've been very busy at Lincoln High today doing my lesson plans, so my associate teacher will be very happy. My speech will be somewhat truncated, but I'd just like to tell you a little bit about myself first. I wasn't born in Waimairi, I was born in Timaru, and I came up here and lived in the ghettos of Redwood, where I cycled every day on my 10-speed to Christ the King, which I now discover is just outside the ward. So that's my connection, but I did go to a lot of birthday parties in Waimairi, and my first girlfriend lived at 286 Withels Road, but I'm not going to go into any details there, just there were some good times. Right, my background is actually in politics. I am from Canterbury, so don't hold it against me that I worked in Wellington, but I do have a background in politics, where I was a journalist, and I also worked for Russell Norman as an advisor on a number of different issues, including environmental. The reason I'm standing here is because a couple of years ago, there was, post-COVID, there was a desire by some councillors to bring back Roundup, which is, I believe, quite a toxic compound, and so does The Guardian, so it's not too out there. Just a disclaimer, I'm definitely not part of Voices for Freedom, but they can stand it because it's a democracy. So with Roundup, I organised a little bit of a campaign against it because I thought, we've got our dogs, we've got the kids, we've got the parks, and I wanted, this was a whole of Christchurch thing, by the way. I'm not wardist. It was like the whole of Christchurch. So we organised a little campaign, and basically a lot of the councillors came around to the fact that it's kind of short-term thinking to chuck a lot of poison that we've managed to get out of our environment back into our parks. So that was the initial impetus for my involvement in local government. I did help out with the campaign before, but it was really an environmental issue that got me hooked into it. And so I've got 3 campaign pledges: environmental action, which is keeping our parks safe and keeping them chemical free with organics. And I'd just like to say one other thing. When you bring Roundup in, you're bringing in an overseas You're buying a lot of chemicals from overseas, and you're not actually supporting the local economy. So we've got organics here, and so we're actually supporting the Christchurch economy. So I just want to get a little bit out of this whole like Avonhead, Waimairi, and bring it a little bit more towards Christchurch, because like we all kind of live in Christchurch. So it's not just about, oh, I'm on 54 Greers Road, so now I'm part of Waimairi or Fendleton. Like we need to actually think a little bit more about the wider area. So that's one of my campaign pledges. The second is honest, transparent politics, and I'd like to give a shout out to Sam McDonald here, because I really enjoy what he's doing. If councillors vote on certain issues like the stadium, he will put down, we voted this way, we voted that way, and I actually think that's good. I like to know what our councillors are doing, so I'd like to give a little shout out to Sam for alerting people to how people vote, because you guys need to know how councillors vote on issues. Like Sam himself supported putting Roundup in our parks, and that's fine, because you now know that. He was 100% behind it, and he owns that because he's a supporter of honest, transparent politics. And Sam also voted against additional community funding for areas like this particular church. And that's, again, I 100% support it. Sam backs cutting community funding. And that's what I like to know. We want to know where different politicians stand. I guess I'm more on the centre left, so I'll claim that now. Yeah. This is a good career to have anyway. So, and the other thing I'd like to say is I'm 100% committed to public transport. I actually believe that we need free buses. And I know people think, oh, this is crazy, free buses. But a couple of years ago, people would have thought, oh, what about, could you actually shut down a country? Could we stop, aeroplanes coming in? Will people be wearing masks all day long? No, they wouldn't have. So ideas like free public transport need to actually be thought about, because it's the best way for low-paid workers to get a pay rise. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is I'm going to put my campaign ideas out there. They may not be 100% popular in this room, but why not? You only get to do this once every 3 years. A couple of other things. Oh, there's the bell. As I said, if my associate teacher is here, I'm back home working on my lesson plans very soon after this. A couple of other things I just wanted to briefly mention is Three Waters. Now, is it that bad? I'll just say, yeah, I know people think it's that bad, but hear me out. I'm Generation X, right? So I go to Canterbury University, then I go to broadcasting school, and then I have to find a job. Do I take the water with me to Wellington or Auckland where I'm looking for a job? No, I don't. Do I care about who owns the water? I want clean, fresh water. And I want to say one thing about chlorination. A lot of people say, oh, I'm running to get chlorination out of the water. Well, if it was a council thing, I'm sure the councillors would have voted to get chlorination out of it. It's actually run by the Ministry of Health. It's because the bore heads are faulty, because they haven't had enough money spent on them. No? Could we get it out? Oh, okay, I'll take that incorrect. Thanks, Leanne. My point is, yeah, I think we should listen to the science. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much, Kevin. Next, we've got Sam McDonald, who needs no introduction at all. A sitting councillor in our ward since 2019. Thank you, Sam.
Well, I'm not really sure how to follow that, to be honest. I guess other than to say, when you are in office, you do get blamed for a lot of things. Some of them aren't true, but some of them are, and, fair credit. Look, good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for coming along tonight. It's great to get so many people along engaged in the local body elections. From my point of view, the biggest frustration is actually we don't lift voter turnout, because, from the moment you wake up in the morning until you go to bed, the council affects your life. in every way possible. So I just think, it's so good and reassuring to have people come along. Can I acknowledge the Avonhead Community Group for all you do in the community? I thought Leanne summed it up so well, that actually you are a real pillar for what represents everything that Waimairi stands for. And actually your advocacy and your lobbying and your public meeting earlier in the year was fantastic. Look, I think with these, I guess I'd probably just reflect really briefly on the last couple of years. As Leanne had mentioned, and actually I should acknowledge, Leanne, we were actually at the Burnside Bowling Club opening about 2 weeks ago, and which is a fantastic facility, and we love supporting it because they do so much. And I made what I think Leanne thought was a joke, which said that she's got 4 weeks left in office, and actually because the media pitch it that her and I fight constantly, that I won't miss her. But I do need to say in the public domain again that I actually will miss it when Leanne leaves. She still doesn't believe it, but I think I've got 4 weeks to convince you. So no. So no, in all seriousness, thank you very much for your passion and commitment to the city, and you will be missed, even though you don't believe me when I say that. Can I also acknowledge my colleagues, James Goff, Phil Major, Aaron Kewen, and I see Celeste Donovan is here as well, and again the council candidates and the mayoral candidates, and David and Phil and the like, and Craig, and I see John Stringer is out the back, and the only reason I know that is because his van is parked right over the entrance with massive signs on it. So if you don't know, John's running for ECAN as well. Look, I guess just looking back on the last couple of years, we've had some good progress on local issues. The Ilam Stream and the team, the Notice, the team that are working on that. We've got funding on budget to look at those enhancements. That's being worked through. As Leanne and Nicola have mentioned, we've renamed the Avonhead Cemetery to better reflect the memorial or the significance of that. We've taken a lot of steps to help resolve local issues for people, and that's one of the fun parts of the job. It's when you get out and about, and actually whether it's a tree or the roads that need to be fixed or parking outside the Somerset Retirement Village, it's really nice to be able to affect that local change. Then you combine that, I guess, with the big issues across the city, and you take that representative role and then that governance role, and I really enjoy that synergy between them. We have massive issues as a city, and from my point of view, and I've been very vocal on it, Three Waters, and I know we can disagree, Kevin, on this, but if we think about it, I fundamentally oppose what the government are doing. I think it's undemocratic. I think they're taking $6.9 billion of our assets, and there has been very limited public consultation. So I want to assure you that I will continue to fight that, because I do not think it's in the best interests of our city. The second one is housing intensification, and you will have seen probably over the last day or two, again, the impacts of that. I think actually there was a whisper campaign going around a while ago that I would somehow get elected now, and then about 5 weeks after the election, trigger a by-election to run for central government. I just want to assure you that while I am a National Party supporter, I think Laylee, quite rightly you said you're not affiliated or you're not backing any mayor. I should put it in the public domain. I am a National Party member, and I am backing Phil Major for mayor. But that doesn't affect my role in the local capacity. I'm equally as disappointed in the National Party as I am the Labour Party over the housing intensification. I think it will wreck our suburbs, and I make no apology for saying that publicly. I guess looking forward, we need to deliver the stadium. There was a commitment put to the people of Christchurch. Look, no one's happy about the price, but in the end, we either made a decision to front that and get on with it, or not at all. And I think 10 years more of relitigation would have been devastating for our city. So the real challenge now becomes, how do we fund that? And we need to look at that as a council for the next term. So look, I don't want to go on for too long, or hopefully there'll be some time for questions, but just to reassure you that I love the role I'm doing now. I work my guts out on behalf of the people of Waimairi and actually for Christchurch. I've been really grateful actually for Leanne and actually for you, Raf, being able to ring you over the last 3 years when there are issues at council in terms of the finances. I'm really fortunate to be the Deputy Chair of Finance, sit on the Audit and Risk, and actually more interestingly at the moment, sit with Leanne and the Deputy Mayor on the Insurance Subcommittee, which probably doesn't sound that exciting, but we've got this big fire over at the wastewater treatment plant and a massive insurance claim. And, it's really good, I guess, to be able to use my chartered accountancy skill set on your behalf to kind of just get stuff done and deliver for the city. So, look, I just want to reaffirm my commitment to the community. I'll continue to work and be accessible for you. And again, thank you very much to the Avonhead Community Group for all you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Now, the community board members. Firstly, we'll have Mr. Wall, Mike Wall, if you'd like to come up and give your address. Thank you.
I can guarantee I won't be here in 5 minutes. But thank you and welcome to everyone here. It's good to see some good old faces and some people I've known for many, many years since I've been in this ward. I'd also like to thank the Avonhead Community Group for arranging this, because there's not many of these places you can go to actually tell us what we want to tell you. I'd also acknowledge the Mayor. Well done, Leanne. I can remember many, many years ago I was at a function in the old Wigram Air Force Officers Mess where we were entertained by about 25 judges from China, and the topic came round to what about the death sentence, and they all nodded, we always have the death sentence, which to me was quite abhorrent, really. You recall that? Yeah. It was one of the occasions you didn't fall asleep, but some of the judges did. But anyway, my name's Mike Wall, and I've been on the board for the last 3 years, and I have been on the board many, many years ago, and also a former councillor. The reason I stood was 3 years ago, the board didn't make a decision which really upset me. And that was with a cricket club that was trying to get a pavilion built. And they put it off for whatever reason till after the elections. And I'm a firm believer, if it's something serious, you deal with it there and now. You don't wait till something happens. Because what happened is that poor cricket club had to pay more money to actually keep things alive. They've now got the pavilion up because the board, when I came, and not because of me, but when I came on, we voted to go ahead with it. So that's the reason I did it 3 years ago. The reason I'm here now is my wife told me it was time I got off and did some more in the community. Also, I'm a firm believer, and now I have a grandchild who's going to go to school in Merrin next year. I want to make sure that the area is safe for her. And since they've put the new motorway in on Russley Road, Avonhead Road and Whittles Road has far more traffic than it did previously. Once before you could go down Avonhead Road onto Russley Road. You can't now. So the traffic rat runs through our area. I want to see safer streets in our area. I want to see speed limits go down and round schools of maybe 20 or 30 kilometres an hour. And I think the government's just legislated that in the last months. So shortly there'll be only 20 or 30 kilometres outside schools. I look at some of the idiots that live in my area and think, why are you living here? Because everyone else is very good and gets on with each other. I want to confront those people and say, if you're not happy with living in their area, I suggest you move to another city. This is a great city to live in. I've lived here in this ward, and I built my house here 30 years ago. And when I was in the police, I took 6 months off leave and built my house, which I'm proudly still in. I have my good wife here with me tonight, and we're celebrating our 50th wedding anniversary this year. So she's a very patient woman, and I just want to say that I'm available for anyone at any time. I've always been that way. If you've got an issue, I don't care who you ring me. I've had some strange calls in the last week from people that don't even live in the area asking me could I stand in their area next time, and I went, no, I'm quite happy to represent Waimairi. So all I'm asking is I'm happy to stand, and there's some very good candidates I'm standing against. I wish everyone well, and we'll get what we deserve. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mike. Now, the next person to speak is Suresh. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I should have carried on. There was more written down here for me to say. That you're another, also a sitting board member, and this year you're being endorsed by the ACG. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'm really delighted that this year Avonhead Community Group has chosen to endorse me. It's an honor, and I promise you that I will not let you down. So why am I standing for community board? Well, I have done it for 2 years. I have enjoyed every bit of it. Me and my wife, we have lived in the neighborhood on Apsley Drive for more than 15 years. Ever since I moved from Bombay to Christchurch, we have been in Waimairi ward for last 21 years. So this is the only place in New Zealand we have called home, and this is home. My community engagement started soon after my daughters became independent, and I no longer remained their taxi driver. And Leanne will perhaps remember the representation review which I wrote, which was not about my street, your street. It was making a simpler system. And then when we were constructing the Rickerton new service center, I went and spoke about that. And that engagement prompted me to one day put my hand up for the community board and haven't looked back ever since. This is a role, as some people said, it's not defined by the boundaries of the ward. Last month on the neighborly group, a lady commented about something on the street which may have caused her near fall. And I went and spoke to her, and then we got the problem sorted with the staff. And after that, I met her and told her that actually I live in Avonhead, she is in Fenderton, strictly not in our ward, but actually does it matter? No. We represent the wider community. You know, the boundary lines of the wards change from election to election. The community involvement, which I like to bring, it's not defined by ward boundaries. It is defined by the communities where we live. I have been a justice of peace for many of you, a Rotary Club member. We started a club just after earthquake. It's a totally different Rotary Club than the conventional ones. All of us are working, all of us are professional, no formalities of Rotary. We just celebrated 10 years last month, and I'm proud to be a charter member of that club. I have a full-time job as an electrical engineer, and I work for Becca, one of the consultancy companies in town, which means that I can only do community work to a lesser extent than I would like. But more recently, I became one of the volunteer drivers of the Christchurch Peace Train and made my childhood dream come true. Now, how good it is to live in a city where you can do these things. I can go on and on, but let me say this. You know, there are the big issues which people at the council table and the mayor, they deal with. What I love about my job is helping our kids achieve something through giving them financial and other support, giving ratepayers money back to these kids, giving money to church groups, men's sheds, other volunteer groups who are working tirelessly within our communities. It's our money which is going back to our communities, and that's a job which I absolutely love. Sam mentioned about the Burnside Bowling Club, where we not only went along with the mayor to be as part of the event, I got to hold a real Commonwealth bronze medal. Now, perks of the job, you know how nice it is that, you know, we do something for the community and you get such things in return, which is why I'm running again. Recently, some of my signs disappeared, and I got interviewed by staff saying, "Do you feel there is a racism there?" I said, "Can I say one thing? I have only experienced positive racism." Huh? What does that mean? I've never heard of that. And I said, people of all backgrounds, they have encouraged me, someone who has come from Bombay, India, to live here, call this community home. And when I ran for the election, people of all walks of life, all color and ages, they have said, we want more people like you from multicultural background, from ethnic communities who want to improve the city. Good on you. So when I said it's positive racism, she didn't know what to print. So I'll stop there. I have enjoyed being your representative for 2 years together with Sam. He gets most of the job done. We share the credit, but that's another perk. I absolutely love it, and I would like to do it for the next 3 years. Thank you very much. Thank you for your support.
Thank you, Suresh. And our next candidate, Nicola, there she is, Nicola McCormick. This is the first time that the Avonhead group has nominate a candidate for the community board to represent the voice of the community more effectively in the best interest of our community. So thank you, Nicola.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. The role of a community board member is to represent you and be your local voice. I'm excited to be standing for community board member in the Waimairi area. To tell you a little bit about myself first, I'm a trained secondary school languages teacher. I specialise in Japanese language actually, and also I help newcomers to New Zealand, look after international students, and have had lots of experience assisting overseas students and migrants to settle into New Zealand. I'm currently working for a charitable organisation. I'm also on the board of trustees at a local school, and in my free times on the weekends you will find me often at Burnside West Cricket Club, where I am assisting with Saturday morning cricket. I have 3 sons. They all love cricket. I have lived in Avonhead for the past 20 years. I went to school here, Burnside High School. I can see some of my old classmates sitting over there in the audience. My husband and I, we're really proud to raise our 3 children here. We just love this place. Our suburbs are changing, and it is important that we as a community, we have a say in how our future is shaped. I've been working actively with the Avonhead Community Group for over a decade now, and with your support we have been able to achieve a number of outcomes for this area. As many of you know, we successfully prevented the council from bringing a concrete jungle to your doorstep by opposing the proposal to rezone 35 hectares of rural land in Hawthornden Road to industry. We have been able to declare the Avonhead Cemetery as a cemetery of national importance with the name change to the Avonhead Memorial Cemetery. And in the last 1 year, we have been working against the Three Waters reform, housing intensification, and the removal of minimum car parking requirements for new developments. We also have been committed to trying to find a viable solution for Fenhall and Pinehurst Street residents who have been facing appalling problems associated with spillover parking from the technology park. I believe strongly that communities should have the power to decide what is best for them. That's why the Avonhead Community Group has nominated me to stand for Community Board. As far as I'm aware, that's the first time a community group has actually nominated, perhaps it's the first time in the country that a community group is actively supporting its own representative to stand for the local community board. I believe that a community can only be empowered if it is well informed about what is going on in the area and from engaging with the council to communicate what it wants. I do not believe in doing things behind closed doors. If I am elected, my promise to you is that I will listen to every local resident's needs and wants. I intend to be available to meet with locals on a regular basis and hear concerns and ideas that can be taken to council and community board. I would like to use my experience to assist and guide this area, all the while maintaining this beautiful and fantastic suburb of sporting, cultural and learning overachievers for many years to come. We have many talented people in this area. I seek your active support to get elected and be your voice on the community board. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicola. Now, could I have those candidates come up the front and we'll take questions? And I'm just looking at the microphones wondering how we're going to do that, but... Yes, Council and Community Board, thank you. Lynn? Does this come off?
Looks like it does.
Sam, should
I think
just...
it will, yeah. Oh, yeah, it does.
Yep, awesome.
Are we just going to sit?
Oh, just wherever you... Yeah, no, just down there.
Okay.
got any questions, if they could raise their hand, and there's a couple of roving mics.
You've got cycleways. Does this mean I've got to be on a cycle with a trailer at the back for a disabled husband? Because you've taken all the car parks away. There you go. There's my question.
No, good question. I always say at public meetings that someone like me should be on a bike a bit more. It'd probably be healthier for me. But look, I accept your point entirely. Some of the cycleways, Herwood Road is a really good example where that has not worked at all. There was overwhelming support from the community not to proceed with the design that happened, but actually it did. So, that will be changed in the coming council if it does. Car parks, yep. So as Nicola mentioned, actually, and I'll pass it round, you don't just want to hear from me, the government in July of 2021 removed the requirement by instruction effectively, which means that if people are building houses, they now don't need to provide for a car park on their property. So they required the council to remove it from its district plan, which means that we have no ability to change that.
I mean, I'm talking about outside shops or medical centres and things like that. There's very rarely any car parks.
Yeah.
You've made the streets so small now.
Yep. Well, all I can say is you preach to the converted. I don't like the way it's going. I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything. You seem to like bikes, don't you?
Yeah. No, I used to bike to St Bede's with no helmet, no hands on the cycle, it was dangerous. So, yeah, no, I do support cycleways, but my point is if you have better public transport and you make it free, more people will use it.
Because he's disabled. He can't get on a bus.
Well, I'm not sure of your problem, but perhaps we can chat later on because I used to be a disabilities advocate, but I'm 100% behind more public transport and more cycleways.
Cool.
Just an answer to that as well. When the Herwood Road cycleway came up, that was one of the questions I asked about the Copenhagen restaurant. How do those people get there? And the answer was they walk. They can walk, 200 or 300 metres. And I said, not all of the people, sir, are your age. They're 40 or 50 years older than you. So you've got to think, and I'm in your age group, and I like to think that I'm going to be considered and not told, oh, you're too old, you have to make other arrangements. Exactly right. I'm not in favour of that.
That the mayoral candidates will be speaking after the questions. I've just had a web inquiry, so sorry, back over to you.
Hi, thanks for coming today. I wanted to voice my support for the Three Waters as well as housing intensification. I think they don't go far enough. The government is actually trying to do something to make houses more affordable, whereas the council, it seems, they're very proud to stand in the way of progress. So my question to you is, if you don't like the housing intensification, what's your solution to make the city more livable and affordable?
I'm assuming that's aimed at me, thinking? Yeah, probably. Okay, well, look, I respectfully disagree with your point, but I respect your right to raise it here. The first one around Three Waters, $6.9 billion of our assets being taken, and when you think about it, they're going into an entity which lines up with the Ngāi Tahu boundaries, which is effectively most of the South Island. What that means from a local point of view is that we have very limited involvement in them. And a really good example was at council on Tuesday that actually there was a flooding issue around Peter Timms. I'm sure people have heard about that in the paper. We all worked constructively around the table to get a resolution. I'm not sure that would happen. Well, actually, I know it wouldn't happen under these new regimes. In terms of housing intensification, I think the inference was we don't support housing intensification. Again, I respectfully disagree. What we've said is that actually there should be local involvement in where we intensify. So actually it makes perfect sense to intensify the CBD. We want to grow the population in there. but it doesn't make sense to cut up suburbs like Avonhead and Burnside when people have bought in these areas knowing that they can have a backyard and sunlight. So, look, I respect your right to do it, but I do disagree. I don't know if anyone wants to add anything.
Hi, I'm Generation X. I did pay $70,000 student loan. Still not in the housing market, and I just think perhaps people need to think a little bit broader, as I said earlier on. I do tautoko with the world of housing intensification, and I just think this idea that our $6.9 billion assets are being stolen is really farcical. I mean, do most people actually think that it's being stolen? In this room.
Well, hey, I can tell you one thing, the assets are definitely going, but what the government can't work out is how they'll take the debt. So we may end up with the debt, but no assets. So they're definitely going. So do you mean the infrastructure?
I mean the way that the Canterbury water is being used. Surely you're not proud of that. You should be ashamed.
Right.
Well, the commissioner's allowing to take all the water. The Southern River was dry for over 10 years.
Look,
it was the Keys government who put in the commissioners, and they dished out the resource consents to put these big irrigators everywhere.
Right, so the only point I would make is that if we're going to have, well, we can have it, I'm more than happy to have a discussion about Three Waters, I'm living and breathing it at the moment, that the reality is that our infrastructure is far better than smaller councils right across this new company that will be established. So my greatest fear is, and you can shake your head and disagree, that's fine, I'm just going to state my case, which you've asked me to do. The reality is that there are smaller councils which don't have the funding mechanisms to deliver the infrastructure that we can. So my view is that actually if this goes ahead, they will be prioritised over the people of Christchurch. So I don't know what more I can say other than these new reforms will deprioritise Christchurch, and people in Christchurch will get a separate water bill and will be subsidising other parts of the South Island.
Cool. Cool, you can hear me? Cool. Okay. First, just a comment on his comment. Yeah, absolutely agree with that, so long as it's actual affordable housing and not, luxury condos that are owned by foreign speculators who don't actually bloody live in them.
Have you got a question?
Yes, I did, but I thought it might go. Well, anyway. What do you think of the need to get people out of cars, especially with the environmental impact thing? And if you're, will you support the introduction of something like a congestion charge, especially for cars that are only occupied by one person who are taking up about 4 times the amount of space on the road that they have any bloody right to? Sorry.
I feel like it's going to be one of those nights where I say I agree to disagree, but I respect your opinion to raise it. In the end, I think Phil Major had a really good idea, which was $2 bus fares. If we can get the occupancy up on buses, that gets people out of cars and is a good thing. But I'm not going to come here and tell you that I don't believe people should drive cars. If they want to drive a car, the council should not dictate that they cannot. So I won't apologise for that. Are there any from anywhere else around the room? Oh, yes, you, yes.
I have a question for Kevin. You seem pretty passionate about Roundup, so I'm just wondering what you're proposing as an alternative, and if the financial contribution to Canterbury will be worth the payoff for using a low-risk herbicide for children and animals?
Thank you for your question. We already are. Sorry, what I was trying to explain is that after the lockdown, the council was trying to save money by putting more Roundup around, and it was voted down by the councillors. So we're using organics, which I believe are produced in Christchurch, so we're helping the local economy. Okay. I think we could go further, though, so that's where I'm coming from. Does that make sense to everyone?
So you do want Roundup, or you don't?
No, sorry, let's say it one more time. I don't want Roundup.
Okay.
Vicky Buck, the former mayor, made a big effort to get organics all around our parks. In 2020, there was a proposal to spray more Roundup, which I led a campaign against.
Okay, so your proposal is a little unclear there. So you do have organics in there?
We do. We already have organics, is what I'm saying, and I want more.
Okay, cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, hi there, up the back here. My question is for Kevin. You talk about Roundup and whatnot. Can you tell us a little bit more?
I'm not a single issue guy, though.
No, I understand that. The question is it actually cost effective? I know there's environmental impacts using Roundup, but is it actually cost effective to ratepayers for you using organics? Because it actually doesn't, unless it's 30 odd degrees or more, 30 degrees or, you know, the hot day, if it's overcast, it doesn't actually work as effectively as Roundup. Roundup doesn't have, obviously, any, once it dries, it's not toxic to dogs or whatnot. I mean, it doesn't actually go through the soil, it sits on the top. Could you give us some more information how much it actually would cost the council for, between the two, if you've got that?
But just checking, you're not working for Monsanto, are you? That
No,
was a joke.
I
don't believe you are.
No.
But my point is, at the moment, there's a lot of lawsuits where people who have got cancer in the US. So what price actually the workers for the Christchurch City Council ending up in 10 years with cancer? I think you need to think a little bit longer term about money.
Roundup has the lowest risk of acute toxicity in humans.
I think you'll find organics have a much lower risk than Roundup.
The actual...
Would be my guess.
Sorry.
Can we move along to a non-Roundup question?
Absolutely. Just one quick thing. That case was actually a guy mixing his chemicals with his arm. So no wonder you're going to get cancer that way.
Hi, I just want to know if any of you are thinking of upgrading any of the infrastructure in our area, such as the playgrounds or adding picnic tables to parks, or since we don't have a hub, if there are any areas that you want to improve in the actual ward.
Thank you. I don't want to... I'm happy to pass along, but I don't want to look like I'm passing the buck. But so, does someone else want to do it first?
Yes, that's one of the things dearest to my heart. As I say, my granddaughter goes to Hyde Park, lives in Hyde Park, goes to Wee Park there, and the swing was broken for about 6 months, and it needs upgrading. And some of that stuff was been there 30 years ago, because I can recall them putting it into inside park and places like that. So no, we need to improve, and we need to put in stuff that's going to be more robust and last a bit longer than we have in the past. So yeah, I'm firmly in that camp.
Can I just add that when it comes to park, and I'm speaking from the experience in the last 2 terms, all the board members are almost unanimous that we need to improve the facilities for the children. So, elsewhere we talk about cutting budgets, this and that, but when it comes to children's park equipments, it just flows through. And that's what I have seen without even naming the parks.
And like everyone here, I want what all of you want, safe roads, and I want our facilities and our parks and areas like that to be well maintained and even upgraded. So what I suggest is that I'm not here to push my own agenda, but if I'm elected, I will work for you and you tell us what you want and we'll take it to the community board. But definitely, I think we've got lots of fantastic community groups here and people that use facilities. So let us continue to use them and maintain them and upgrade them.
And just the final thing, there's 2 points. Oh, sorry. No,
Go ahead. Yeah. I was walking around this city for especially Waimairi ward and door knocking and talking to people for the last few weeks. I heard lots of comments regarding parks, and also something has taken out from the park and some is not enough for teenagers to come and enjoy. And now it's basically for small kids to come and enjoy, and the rest of the people are just using their mobile phone, they're sitting there, etc. So I think if I am elected, I will look after for the teenagers and also other kids as well to enjoy our park, and also the grown-up people to come and enjoy our park as well.
Just 2 questions on the infrastructure. The first one is, We're working at the moment around a safe school program. So the roads around the schools, you'll see locally, there'll be some upgrades come through with some government money for that, just to slow the traffic immediately outside the schools. So there'll be that. There's some things at Avonhead Road. We're just working on a package at the moment which will go out for consultation. And just the point around the parks, I think everyone agrees that we should be doing it. One of the things we've done this term at council is look at how we speed up the delivery of new new playgrounds within parks, because when you've got so many across the city, we should be buying a heap of one thing at a time to get it as cheap as possible and then put them in. Well, it's probably the accountant coming out of me, but the issue is we can't, we're not getting through delivery of them enough, so we are working to streamline it so that we can upgrade what we can.
Last question down the back. One for Mr. List. The three waters, can you explain briefly the benefits of what you're extolling?
Yeah, the benefits are for the whole of New Zealand. If we move beyond our little backyards, the benefit is to have good water for the whole of New Zealand. It was actually begun by the National Party after the Havelock North poisoning. So that's the point. I've heard a lot tonight about, in Waimairi this, in Waimairi that. Obviously, I'm standing for Waimairi, but you've got to look, because we're all New Zealanders, right? So let's not be so selfish. That's my attitude.
Well, probably, if that's the last question, a good note to finish on. I will continue to be selfish for Waimairi. So.
One question here.
One more. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so just looking around here tonight, we live in a democracy. The interested audience is pretty skewed in terms of age cohort, okay? So my question to all the candidates here, including the mayoral candidates, is we really want to engage our 20, 30, 40, 50-year-olds. I will stop there. We really do. There's an incredible wealth of people out there who, are busy but got a lot of really good thoughts. My question to you people is, how do you plan to engage those people in the democratic process and reach to them, to get them here, to get them to talk, to be involved? That's my question. Tough question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. That question was actually asked to me this weekend by someone of a similar age as you, 50-year-old. So my answer is this. We as elected members have to serve the entire gamut of the community. So there is a place for Facebook, there is a place for neighborly, there is a place for the old style phone, an email, a physical address, a letter, a face-to-face chat. And I have been lucky that I have lived through all of that. I have lived before internet, before cell phones. So I can still write and receive letters and talk to people face-to-face. And to me, chat is opening a door and actually having a talk to someone in front of you, not just on a cell phone. So we need to have all those avenues open, actually encourage them. So my information is all public. I have a landline if you prefer. I have a cell phone and email. My home address is public. Anytime welcome. And of course, there is neighborly, Facebook, and other modern means. So totally accept your thing that we need to be all inclusive in communication.
Yeah, I am working with the youngsters because I have a son with 22 years old son. I talk to lots of his friends and also university students around this place. I was talking to them. They are not actually much interested in any of the city council things except environment, sustainability. So if we are promoting environmental and sustainability for the future, they will be engaged. So that is the one thing I found. So I am working with them. I am talking to them. And if there is something they organize, then all of the council members or representatives, they wanted us to be involved in that activities as well. Then I think we can bring them back to this type of groups and activities.
But just to answer your question, how do we engage with you and I, is a good question. We do it at the Garden Awards, and I look at when we have the Garden Awards, it's mainly your generation that has the Garden Awards. because young people don't seem to be into gardens as much as you and I do. And I think it's one of those things we need to have, the boards need to look at, how do they engage? And suggestion could be we have open days for the community to come into the community boards and see, and have different days for seniors and for young, which we have every meeting you are entitled to come and listen. And we encourage you to do that, because that's how you, because I mean, sometimes we have meetings where no one is there. So we do it in secret, really.
Question over here.
I need to steal this now, I'm sorry. Thank you very
One
much
more
to the
question,
candidates.
Eileen.
Oh, no, we've already run over time, sorry.
Oh, we've got one, just one,
Oh,
Eileen.
okay, I'll answer it. What's the question?
Okay, if we get a chance, Kilda, I just want to know quickly your thoughts on the council's current relationship with Ngāi Tahu and local hapu, and what, if anything, would you do to strengthen it?
Okay, I think that we'll hold that one. Good question. We'll do the mayoral speeches, and then I'm sure that that will be taken into account.
Okay,
Thank you. Right, so, Dwayne's going to carry on from now, so thank you, Dwayne.
Kia ora. Thanks. Hey, what an amazing turnout. You guys, wonderful support for the community. It's a brilliant thing, and it's good to see everyone turn out tonight. So, I don't hold it any longer because we've done plenty here. So, it's my chance to introduce the two mayoral candidates that we've invited today. Again, I'll ring the bell at 9 minutes, so you know, hey, you've got a minute to wrap up and finish those things through there. So, I'd like to invite Phil Major to step forward first, and if you could, yeah, please, welcome to the stage.
No, not yet. Hello, hello. Yep, got it. Thank you everyone for coming here tonight. It's very good to see so many people here. And I'm very pleased to see Kevin, because my sister lived at 182. And my family's been looking for you for a while. But I will, and I'll acknowledge Sam, the councillor for this area, and I understand he never visited number 182, so he's a good guy. So, but thank you very much, everyone, for coming to listen to myself, all of us, David as well, everybody. A little bit about me. I was born and raised in New Brighton, and have lived in Christchurch all my life. Since leaving school, I worked in my family's contracting business, subdividing subdivisions, or building subdivisions and infrastructure all over the city for 45 years. I recently stepped away from the firm, and it's been run by my daughter Brittany. One of the best advice that I got from the head of legal at council was, Phil, if you're serious about standing for mayor, you have to get out of being a director, a shareholder, a employee, trustee, whatever. Get out of it. So I did. One of the things that helped me get to that point was 7 years ago, I had a big prang in Australia, got run over by a truck and had 21 broken bones, and I ICU for 2 weeks with a punctured lung. And it made me realise that I was too much at the front of my business. If I'd got killed then, if I'd died then, I'd be no use to, well, I'd be no use to anyone anyway. But it made me realise that things can change just like that. So it was a good catalyst to back off from work. Now what's happened with having my daughter Brittany run it and other good people, it's all in a trust, and I do sometimes struggle to, because it's been 45 years that I've been doing it, it's hard to get it out of your head. But it's like I've died, but if something really goes wrong, they can ring up and say, oh, what would you have done here? So I've got that luxury. But my wife Chrissy and I, who's sitting over there patiently, and I are happily married, and between us we have 5 children in their 30s and 9 grandchildren. 8 of them are under 9 years old. Christmas days at our place would be commonly called a bloody disaster. but it is very good fun. Grandkids really are the best medicine, and if you're having a bad day, go and talk to your grandkids. And what we are is very lucky that they all live in Christchurch. We're very blessed. For the last 3 years, I've been the councillor for the Burwood ward, which I've really enjoyed. But I can see how we can make things better. I'm running for mayor because I want to regain people's trust in council and get stuff done. In the latest survey, only 42% of residents, you guys, had faith in what we do. This has got to be turned around. I know I can make a difference as mayor, and I'm going to share with you 3 things, I've got 6, but I'll share with just 3, that I believe will make it happen. Finish our roads and footpaths, keep rates affordable and reduce debt, and make Christchurch an even better place to live. Firstly, finish our footpaths, roads and footpaths. We all have a footpath outside our house. If we have a problem, tree root damage or trench settlement or leaky Toby box or something, we rely on the council. They respond immediately by marking the problem with white paint. Then sometimes, you've probably walked around here and seen the white marks on the footpath. Then sometimes it takes 2 years for a works order to be created to fix the problem. Then the residents begin to think we don't listen to their concerns. Over 50% of the complaints that I get are related to issues like this. And to fix this, I believe we need a roving maintenance crew of, say, 20, 30 guys that we say to them, right, here's just the footpaths and berms I'm talking about here. Here's 10 roads, go out and do those as if they're your own, take ownership of them, and once you've gone up one side and down the other, fix anything that needs fixing within reason. Don't go mad, but I've walked up and down the street down here to the shops, and there's stuff, I've been here 15 years, there's still trenches in the footpath that need fixing. So if we fix those things, life will be a lot better. You guys, you pay for your rates, you put it on the fridge, you go, oh, that's expensive. You walk out the door and you see maybe your rubbish not collected or your footpath not right or the grass in the berm's too high or the curb and channel broken, and you go, you get upset. But if those things were all cleared away, a lot of people would be a lot happier. So that's what I want to try and achieve there. Make rates affordable and reduce debt. We are very good at rating for a figure and not delivering the work. Last year, we overrated by $100 million for work that wasn't completed. I feel that we should be pushing our holdings company, Christchurch City Holdings, to deliver a far better return to the council than they do now. On the last estimate I heard, we are getting a $16 million dividend, which is good money, it's good. But it's on $5 billion worth of assets, and it's not a fantastic return. So we've got to work hard with those guys to get them to lift their game. I know COVID's been here, and to be fair, it's not fair on them because we've had a very tough time. But we need to go down the budget line by line and prioritise work to find savings, and only do the necessary projects and grow the value of our city's assets, and keep rates increases below inflation. Now that does sound hollow because inflation is at 6.5, and if it doesn't go higher, I'll be surprised. But we must really work to keep rates affordable and reduce debt. And lastly, the other one, I should know it off by heart, but I've swapped it around a bit. Lastly, we must make Christchurch an even better place to live. As we know, it's a fantastic place to live now, and as Suresh was saying, the opportunities he's had from where he's come from to here, it's music to my ears. Christchurch is really growing, with lots of people moving here from all over the country. Our housing is more affordable, and we have an abundance of new facilities. Tapai, Metro Sports, Hagley Cricket Oval, which is internationally renowned, the Town Hall, Margaret Mayhew Playground, Naipunawai Sports Hub, which has got the hockey, water-based hockey, it's got an international running track, it's getting netball out there with Netball moving out, and the stadium. I believe that with all these new attractions, Christchurch will become the events and sporting capital of New Zealand and a destination for overseas events. And just thinking back to when I lived over the road from QE2 in 1974 when I was at school, when they were building QE2, I used to rush home from school and go across the road and see what they were doing. It was more important. It was more exciting to me than going to school, to be honest. We had the Commonwealth Games there, and that was a fantastic time. If we've got all these new facilities, and take for example, people say, oh, what about cycling? We can send all those people down to Invercargill and they can reap the benefit of that. We could have the Commonwealth Games here and it wouldn't cost us that much because everything we've got is new and it'll be really, really good. But one thing we need to do is focus on economic development in Christchurch to ensure opportunities for our kids and grandkids, just like you said, Mike. Because they will grow up, they will go overseas on their OE, like most of us may have, but we want them to come back, and because Christchurch will always be home, New Zealand will always be home, but we want them to come back to Christchurch. So as a mayor that is focused on, this requires a mayor that is focused on Christchurch's best interest, particularly on building a relationship with central government. We must continue to make Christchurch a better place to live, just like we always know it is. So that's three of the 6 things. The 3 of the things that I was going to share with you tonight. Make our rates affordable and reduce debt, fix our roads and footpaths, and make Christchurch an even better place to live. And I look forward to hearing some of your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Phil. Now, just like to invite David Mates to present his speech for us as well. Thank you.
Kia ora, ko David Mates aho. I was just sitting down at the front here with 2 esteemed councillors who did challenge that Phil and I have done so many debates over the last few weeks that we probably should reverse the speeches and see whether we can do justice to each other. But actually, no, you don't have to, Phil. But what you will get a sense of is 2 quite different candidates that you've got. And I think that's the beauty of democracy, is being able to make some choices. Firstly, a wee bit about myself. Born and bred in Christchurch. Came from a large family of 10, of which 8 were sisters. Now, for the women in the room, as a young boy growing up, having to learn how to navigate complexity, conversations, and most importantly, knowing when to shut up. And I think those are really important characteristics of leadership that have, that have followed through, is the need to listen. Was ingrained with me very early on in life. Also, from a family with a father and uncle were both All Blacks. And the challenges with that in terms of the expectations that the skills and competencies of that generation come to the next one. And I'm a living example where it did skip a generation. However, my dad also was one of 3 All Blacks back in 1967 that stopped the Springbok tour to South Africa, or the All Black tour to South Africa, before it was trendy to do so. And I guess that is one of the things, as you get older, you see a lot of the characteristics of your parents becoming to be displayed in yourself. And one of those is actually about principle. And I guess to some extent, in his case, buddy-mindedness. So, born and bred in Christchurch, went to school here, university, through the University of Canterbury Lincoln College. So I've got an agricultural science degree when that was still part of the University of Canterbury. I'm married with 3 children and have worked across a range of different sectors. 3 years as a farm advisor on the West Coast, 6 years over in the UK, working in and leading large-scale transformation of a big retail chain. And at that time, they were Marks and Spencer's major competitor. And then I was dragged or invited into health at a time when New Zealand was looking to bring people from the private sector to sort out the mess of health. And I'm not quite sure that ever quite sorted itself out. But certainly in the last decade, I've had the privilege of leading both the Canterbury and the West Coast District Health Boards and finishing up there in 2020. But also coming down into Canterbury, which at that time the health system was broken. It had a warring board, executive, clinicians, a breakdown of relationships between the hospital and primary care, and you, the community, were losing trust and confidence in your health system. And this had nothing to do with the earthquakes, this was before that. And we needed to set about actually rebuilding a health system that was centred around people, not the warring tribes, and not the professional groups that were creating a very, very siloed approach.
And over the next 18 months, we moved from a totally broken system to one that was actually built on trust. When I first arrived, every staff member, I think, had a speed dial to the press. So if you were thinking something, it was in the paper the next, or not the next day, it was on the radio that day. And about 18 months later, accused of actually shutting the whole lot up because the media were not getting anything out of the District Health Board. And the only way that that could have happened was me shutting down all the conversation. The difference was we went to a totally transparent process of actually opening everything up and co-designing futures. And the funny thing that happens with that is actually the need for people to feel that they're not engaged disappears. So that need for collaboration, the need for actually building and having people involved in solving problems and seeing themselves invested and reflected in the solutions is such an important part. Well, I'm standing for Mayor. There's some key themes that have been coming through to me absolutely consistently from no matter what groups I've been speaking to and what community engagements. The first of those is trust, and seeing the continued erosion of trust and confidence in the council. And part of that's reflected in terms of both the way that the councillors as a group are working and behaving, and how the council as an organisation is delivering. And the two are quite different, but are very much interrelated in terms of the councillors setting the tone and direction and the council being responsible for the delivery. And what has been reflected back is actually there's a sense that that is not working the way that it should do. Collaboration has come through very, very strongly. So many different groups, whether it be business, whether it be environmental groups, whether it be the arts centre or community, wanting to collaborate with the council but finding it incredibly hard to do so. And part of that is actually a council needing to be much more outward looking and comfortable with engaging and working with others to solve problems, because the council cannot do that by itself. And indeed, the council shouldn't be doing that by itself. The other one is communication, the sense of we're getting talked at, and particularly the term consultation gets people kind of pretty wound up very quickly on the basis that solutions are being presented to communities, and then the feedback from the communities has not been reflected in what is then proposed. And one of the things I know in health, the one thing that I learnt very early on in health is I had some of the most brilliant solutions and could have solved the problems of the world. And you wake up the next morning and you kind of expected everyone to understand and share the brilliance of the solution that was there, and I was always puzzled to start off with because people went out of their way to make sure it was never going to happen. And it took a wee bit to work out that actually the reason for that is it all came down to saying, where was I in the conversation? Where were we in the conversation? And if people and communities are not part of solutions, then it is always things being done to communities, and communities don't respond well to that. And that's one of the reasons I've got a lot more grey hair than I probably anticipated at this stage. But the importance of collaboration, people at the centre of everything is the other one coming through. And I think the reflection in terms of the response to the sewage fire, that lack of, or we seem to have forgotten that actually there were people and communities at the end of that. And the lack of urgency and response to that has left a community feeling very disenfranchised and abandoned. And for many of us on this side of the city, we only kind of get reminded every so often, but actually there are communities that today are still living and breathing that. And we've got to get much, much better at doing that. And for a city that's been through so much, we've got no excuse not to be experts at it, because there isn't another place in this country that should be able to respond in that way. A just society is the other bit that's come through really, really strongly. And very much the basis of last night, 500 kids living in motels or sleeping motels in Christchurch. 2,000 or just over 2,500 people on community waiting lists for social housing. And again, that element of the disconnect of kids back with education in schools, and some of the issues that we're seeing playing out in the community in terms of that are involving the police. it is no longer an issue just for individual agencies. It is our challenge. It is our problem. And we've got to find a way as a community of how we're going to do this differently. Because yesterday's solutions are not going to give us tomorrow's answers. And so we've got to really change the mindset. And the one thing from our younger population is the one thing that is left under no doubt is climate change. And the sense of lack of hope and future that they are seeing, and that they're looking at our generation saying, we don't think you're taking it seriously. This is our future that we need to be mindful of. So one of the core elements coming up through too is just about everywhere I go, people can continue to describe Auckland. They can describe Wellington. They can describe Queenstown. They can describe what Christchurch used to be, but they can't describe what Christchurch is today. And yet many will describe some really fantastic things happening in the city. But we haven't got a story that we're telling ourselves. And if you look at some of the innovation, the startups, the businesses, the arts, what's happening in the environment, we're sitting as a city on some of the most amazing things that many other places would kill for. And yet we don't understand it, and we can't tell a story to ourselves. And too often, others are telling our story that's not resonating with us. So somewhere along the way, the real challenge back to us collectively was we need to grab and grab hold of our narrative. So, given that the time's just about up, the element that I'm bringing to the hopefully the choices that you'll be making in the elections is a huge amount of experience with a collaborative leadership style that is based very much on actually how to solve some of the complex, gnarly issues today with the context of tomorrow and the eye of tomorrow being part of that. And the only way that you can do that is through effective community engagement, because the only thing that's ever changed society is actually community action and communities holding their entities, their organisations, their mechanisms to account. So thank you.
Kia ora, Nami. Thank you, Dave, for your presentation. Just before everyone decides, this is your opportunity to engage with our mayoral candidates. We're just going to open the floor again, and they'd like to hear from you, and you'd love to hear from them. So here's your chance. If I can invite you both to step forward again, and we might start with that question we had earlier. Sorry. It's your chance to engage, so take that chance.
Is this allowed to be to mayor and council candidates? Okay, because you are. Okay, mayor only. Thoughts on the council's current relationship with Ngāi Tahu, and what, if anything, would you do to strengthen it? Thanks.
I believe council has got an extremely good relationship with Ngāi Tahu, and it's been brought out mainly by a lot of work from Leanne over the years. We've got 2-3 staff on council that are there all the time representing Ngāi Tahu, so we can go and ask them, one especially, ask them what's going on and how they can help us navigate our way through things. I think it's good. I really want to make it better. Well, it's not bad at all, but I do not want to lose all the hard work that Leanne's done. So I'll be working hard to make sure it's every bit as good as it is now, if not better.
I think the relationships have got a long way to go. They've come a long way, and I think today they're under probably more pressure and stress than they have been for a long period of time. And that's reflecting some of the complexities like Three Waters, like other issues that are playing out through the country. It is something, it's a wee bit too often, they're engaged as an afterthought, as opposed to being there at the table at the beginning. And so I think we've got a long way to go, but it is coming off a basis where a lot of the foundations have started to go into place, and a lot of improvement has happened.
Just to follow up, just to follow up on that a little bit, with our, we had a vote on whether we left C4LD the other day. I was one of the people that voted to move it, and I've had a lot of backlash saying, oh, you're not interested in Three Waters, I'm very interested in Three Waters, and I don't support it whatsoever. But we gave some money to the C4LD. You know what I'm talking about when I say C4LD, Communities for Local Democracy. We gave some money to them along with 30 other councils, and they went into bat for us, and they pushed the ball as far as they could. They've been to the select committee, they've had their say, but in my view, it was time, they couldn't do any more. So it's up to me, I felt we need to refocus and join up our ties with Ngāi Tahu even more and say, right, we're leaving those guys, they've done a great job, let's get back to what we should be doing.
Got a question for you, David. It's been quite obvious of what Phil voted for with Three Waters and intensifications. What's your position on that?
So I fundamentally don't agree with the centralisation agenda that's going on at the moment, because it doesn't matter what it is, the more distant you get from local communities, the less local communities have a voice. And that's really dangerous. And you're seeing that in the politics, you're seeing that in health. So relative to Three Waters, I don't agree with where in the direction that's going. However, and I will put a however, we're still a city, while we've got some of the best infrastructure in the country, we're still a 19th century water system. And we are going to need to have to find different ways of dealing with that. But by doing it the way that's proposed is nuts. Intensification, I would have voted, and it's one of the things that, probably one of the few things that Phil and I might actually agree on, is actually the decision to, for the council to throw back the intensification legislation. The reason for that is it doesn't make sense of a one-size-fits-all approach. Do we need intensification in the city? Yes, we do. We cannot continue to sprawl, but unless it's done in a planned way that makes sense for the city, then it has no place here, and it will just continue to create a lot of angst in communities.
Yeah, having listened to your speeches, it seems we have the choice between a candidate who's looking at the big issues like climate change, community engagement, and making sure that everybody has got a say, and somebody who's going to fix our footpaths. What have you got to say about this?
So I think that is one of the differences that you're probably seeing. I come from a basis that actually, if you're going to deliver long-term gains, you've got to plan and make sure that there is a pathway to deliver that. Fixing pathways, roads, and other components, that is the role, responsibility and accountability for the council to deliver. If that is not delivering, that's a delivery issue that needs to be worked on and changed. But it's really important that I think councillors don't see themselves as the deliverers, because that's what the council is there for as an organisation, and performance and the expectations from councillors to their organisation about performance is what they need to do, and it's what's really, really important.
You make it sound like I'm not as interested in the environment. Okay. One of the things we need to do, that I've talked about a lot, is the intensification thing that I voted against, so to speak, was one of the things was removing trees. Now, one thing that eats carbon dioxide up more than anything else is trees. So we've got to plant more trees. We've got 100 hectares at the old old Bexley dump. We've got 100 hectares out in the red zone at Brooklands, which are unsaleable, unusable. So we might as well plant trees on. We could plant 1 million at each area. We've got to get our tree canopy area up. Fair enough, they're not going to be right in the suburbs where possibly they're needed, but when we do a comparison 5 years on 5 years of where our tree canopy is, they fly across and they look down at the photos, and that's how they do it. We've got to get the canopy percentage up in our area. Now, another thing is that we really need to incentivise or help people or talk them into it as far as electric cars go, I read in the paper there's 50,000 electric cars in the country, which is a milestone, and that's good, it's to be applauded. I'm also, you may have heard that I bought a hydrogen car. I believe that hydrogen is the way to go, I really do. You look at a battery-powered car with cobalt and lithium that's getting hauled out of the ground and actually doing a lot of damage to the world. Hydrogen only needs water and power. Now, in the South Island, all our power is made from green energy. We haven't got any coal-fired stations. It's either solar or it's wind or it's hydro. So we can be the centre or the capital of New Zealand for green hydrogen power. And the more we change to that, and it is coming. One of my directorships I'm on is Cape Valley, which is the Transwaste, which is Cape Valley. We have been approached, all the rubbish goes up there from Christchurch, which, to be fair, is only 18% of the stuff that goes into Cape Valley is the red rubbish tin. So it's not, in the big scheme of things, it's not a lot. The rest of it's contaminated ground and stuff like that. We suck all methane out of the rubbish and make it into, we've got 4 1 megawatt generators there, so we put power back onto the national grid. We get paid 7 cents a unit for that power that goes on the national grid. This power here, I would think, is around about 27 cents a unit. We've been approached by 2 hydrogen companies to say, please sell us your power cheap. We talked to Huranui Council, they're going to give us as much water as we like. And what we want to do very soon, is happening because it's already coming down the North Island with hydrogen, is have those big blue CWS trucks that you see going backwards and forwards up to the landfill running on hydrogen, because the only byproduct of a hydrogen truck is water dripping on the ground. So there's lots of things we can do, big picture stuff. Sorry, I'm rabbiting on.
I will just add to that is we've got to be very careful of thinking we can plant our way out of the challenges that are facing us. It is requiring a multi-pronged approach, and there isn't a single magic bullet for this. It is really important that we are getting things that are coming together in a really cohesive way. And that's where some of the things like the solar power that's going to be planned at the airport to support electrified aircrafts is an important part of a series of pieces of the jigsaw that are going to need to go into place. But we've got to be really careful that we don't jump from one magical solution to the other, because actually there isn't one single answer.
Question over here.
The airport was mentioned earlier. We heard some time ago that Christchurch Airport was planning to open a new airport at Terrace in Otago. What is your opinion about that proposal, please?
Well, I'll answer that in 2 ways. I was surprised how the decision was made and the process that went through with that. The second bit, in terms of Terrace, I think there's probably a wee bit more than meets the eye sitting behind that. And part of that is actually Auckland interests own Queenstown Airport and others. And we've got to be careful as a city that actually decisions about the South Island and Christchurch are not being made elsewhere. I'm not so sure that the Terrace as the airport is necessarily the right thing, but I think there are actually bigger politics at play in terms of Christchurch making sure that it's in control of choices and decisions being made both here in Christchurch and importantly across the South Island. And a number of you will recall decisions with Air New Zealand when they removed this as an international hub. Again, decisions being made up north that were not in the best interests of the city.
I was surprised that we found out about Terrace in the airport. It was a bit of a shock to me. However, it was through an unfortunate circumstance of events that they actually came and told us about it the next day. I also said to the CEO of the airport at the time, I said, how did you pay for it? Oh, we paid for it with cash. And of course, I just go, it's 45 million, I think. I'm going, couldn't we have done with $45 million to pay off some of the debt that we've got? But I was quite anti it, but I did sit down with Malcolm Johns and I talked to him and he explained to me how strategic that is. Now, it may never happen, but we've got the land down there, we're going for a resource consent. If it doesn't happen, we've got to fail spectacularly so it never happens with anyone else. So if it doesn't work, it'll be sold for solar, or it might be sold back, but we'll always get our money back for it. But we've got to be in the game for down there, just to keep an eye on what Auckland was maybe doing to us.
Plans for the next 12 months, and will you keep the same advisors and staff, or perhaps change a few of them?
One thing, I started 3 years ago. The CE started 2 days before me. And one thing I have seen, because it was a massive learning curve, Raf could have told me it wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. But one thing I saw is, I saw the top level, what Dawn has done over the last, I'll say Dawn, consider CE, what CE has done over the last 3 years has gone down the first 3 tiers of the company. In the 3 years that I've been there, people are walking around with a lot more spring in their step and a lot more spark in their eyes. We need to continue down a little bit further and see how we go. The other thing is too, that in my previous job, I worked with a lot of people at council down on the ground, so to speak, and I meet these guys in the lift, and they say, oh, we've got some good ideas, we'd like to do this, and we suggest this and that. We've got to listen to those guys because they're on the coalface. So we listen to those guys. We've got the top coming down. We've just got to work on the middle now, not saying that no one goes to council to do a bad job. You know, they all go there for the right reasons. And a lot of the time, they get lambasted because, oh, you're not doing this right and this is not happening. It must be hard for them. And the other thing, I'll just say one other thing. With the government throwing down on us 3 waters and intensification and local government reform and RMA, our guys are up to our neck in it. We've got, our staff, I should say, are up to their neck in it. We've been decimated by COVID. We've been decimated by people leaving. The ones that are there are working their butts off. So it's a lot of pressure from government coming down on top of them on the work they're already doing. So we should leave them alone for a little bit, but we have changed the top 3 layers and we're working up from the bottom.
Question now. When I first stepped into the District Health Board, it was being criticised everywhere around the country for its broken leadership, poor performance, and what we did not do was a restructure. Part of that was actually focusing on building culture and getting the tone and the direction and the clarity. And what was remarkable is the number of people that were seen as either not performing suddenly started performing in ways that they, kind of surprised them and many others. And actually over the years, there were several people that ended up leaving because that was not a choice they wanted. But to me, the most important bit is actually getting the culture right. And to get the culture right, it starts at the board, the council at the table with the councillors, in terms of setting the tone and the expectations for the organisation and holding the organisation to account. So to me, I think that is one of the most important things, to be getting clear and established right from the outset. If you don't get the culture right, then no matter what else you do, you'll end up probably just getting a reflection of exactly what you've always had.
Kia ora. So over the past couple of years, the Christchurch City Council have chosen to decrease the number of security guards at the bus interchange from 3 down to 1, which has had brilliant effects of cutting 2/3 of the cost of security down, but it has had a terrible impact on the safety there. Today, I saw a 14-year-old get beat up. Yesterday, it was a 13-year-old got assaulted by about 20 teenagers. Last week, there was a 30-year-old woman who was beaten onto the ground. St John had to respond again by a bunch of 16-year-olds. And just so what would, and I was meaning to ask this to the councillors earlier, and if any of them would love to talk about it, I'd love to talk about that. What would you say in response to that specifically, as well as the balance of saving money over the safety of those that you represent?
Yep, totally agree with you, and it's not good enough that that sort of thing happens. one of the initiatives that the council has taken at the moment, along with the Central Business Association, is we've shared the cost of, there's only one, and I'd like to see it a lot more, a roving security guard, that it belongs to half to the council, half to the business group, because they know that person is there all the time. They're going around. Sometimes they might, in the mornings, they sort of move some homeless people out of doorways that they're living in. And then they also offer help to people who may be lost. But they're roving around, and it has made a hell of a difference, not at the bus depot yet. We need to do a bit more of that. I'm not sure whether it's not an ECAN problem. I don't think that for the security of that, it's the bus depots, but we need to work more with that. We've got a collaboration with the business district and us, and it's working very well. So we need to build on that and do it better, so it's safer for everyone down there.
It is distressing to see the increasing surge of violence that is sitting through there, and I will go back to using just a health example in terms of Christchurch Hospital ED, which has most of the most interesting people that you could have turning up there, and it used to have so many assaults on staff and others, and we had a paramilitary unit called security guards, that in that basis, what was ending up happening is they were escalating the violence on the basis of the response that was in place, and we moved to a totally different one, which in terms of you couldn't identify who the security guards were, and they were all based and focused on de-escalation. And that was a really important part of us starting to reframe and rethink, how do we solve a problem that was starting to get out of hand? And I think we're starting to see the same sort of issue here. I think the initiatives with the police that have been in place for quite a period of time in terms of roving community patrols is also a bit of actually how do communities also help give much more visibility and eyes for the police to be able to respond quicker as well.
Yeah, Christchurch City Council is one of the biggest businesses in town. I want to know what New Zealand basic commercial experience you've had. I know you've both been on boards, but I mean real commercial experience to make profit, work with staff, and make best for business commercial decisions.
Right. This is going to be good. As I said, I left school in 1974 and went to the family's business, and I had a lot of good work ethic put into me. You'd learned, as I might have said, for the first 2 weeks we had no money to pay anyone, and we had to borrow it. And my father always said to me, always do your homework and never over-rev yourself as far as borrowed money goes. That has been instilled in me right from day dot, because you knew, right in the back of your mind, it got close sometimes, but it didn't happen, thank goodness, is if you don't make money, you don't eat. So that's been instilled in me for a long time. My grandfather started in 1945, my father was about 1960, I suppose, and I was 1974 when I went into it. So I've only ever worked in one place, but one thing I have done is really kept staff morale up. Now, it's very easy when there's only 40 people. You can walk around and you can ask what someone's doing for the weekend or how are their kids and what stuff like that. I did try to do that at the council. I started walking up and down the different floors, and I was told, don't do that, you're intimidating the staff, get out of it. So I want to do that. I really want to do that, because I said, I just breathe oxygen and go to the toilet like anyone else. I'm not special, I'm not clever Dick. I'm not a politician, I'm not a bureaucrat. I just want to get things done. So I want to get morale up in the council, similar to what I had at work. I know there's 2,500 people and it's probably a bridge too far, but with the business sense that I've had over the years, brought to me from my grandfather and my father, I think it is a good, sensible thing to have and get staff morale up.
I was responsible for leading one of New Zealand's largest businesses, and called a District Health Board. It was a Crown entity up until 2-3 years ago. A Crown entity similar to Air New Zealand or other components like that. It is only in the last 2 years that it has actually become part of the public service. And it's something that most people don't understand. In terms of the DHB, the largest business in New Zealand and the largest employer with 12,000 staff between here and Canterbury. We ran the largest recruitment agency in New Zealand, the biggest capital programs undertaken in this country, big balance sheets, and balancing a whole range of different elements in terms of both working for profits, multinationals, strategic partnerships with the like of Hewlett-Packard internationally, and a whole range of different elements there. The one bit that differs a wee bit from other businesses is we didn't have the ability to put up our prices. So that's fundamentally, it's the same business disciplines. What you've got to understand is the market you're working and operating in and where your fiscal drivers come from. In terms of our environment, funding was determined by not us putting prices up, where many other businesses have the opportunity to do that. So what you're looking at was one of the largest businesses with balance sheets, capital projects. As I say, you know, we had the largest payroll in New Zealand of any sector or industry, and running 52 employment arrangements and agreements and 1,000 different roster patterns through payroll every week is some of the most sophisticated stuff that you could ever do. The other bit is actually the amount of innovation and product that was produced from there, that we worked with commercialisation with Hewlett-Packard. The benefit we got is some of the technology that no one else in the world could access. So some of that was only available in the Manila Space Centre. We got it for virtually nothing, but on the basis that they made a huge amount out of that in terms of commercialisation. So we did a lot of product development, a lot of you know, kind of innovation sitting around that. So that's actually what a large complex business just happens to be in health, and it was up until more recently a Crown entity.
There's one thing spending money, how do you not spend it? You've also talked about spending lots of money.
Oh, no, in terms of spending money, if you look back at the disciplines over the last decade, in terms of being rated the best performing district health board in terms of fiscal controls, outputs and outcomes by Audit New Zealand, which are the government auditors. Treasury, through their investor confidence rating, ranked this district health board as the highest of any of the district health boards and public entities in the country on the basis of managing large, complex capital projects. Those are, yeah, kind of those sit out there. Where we had a challenge in terms of decisions being made centrally about funding that were at odds with what was happening elsewhere around the country. And you try and explain to me for 5 years, for the Canterbury District Health Board being funded at half the rate of funding increases compared with the next lowest funding increases for district health boards as the government's response to earthquakes and disasters and the fastest growing population in this country. If you do the sums on that, doesn't matter how operationally efficient you are, you're then faced with you either cut services or the government needs to make different decisions. And that ultimately is the biggest challenge that faced this district health board. And I wasn't prepared to cut the services.
Shane.
I'm not a Cantabrian, but I love Christchurch. But Christchurch doesn't have a centre or a heart. The square is a disgrace, and the tourism industry is going to be coming in, and we present them with the square in a state of distress. Can you influence the resurrection of the central tourist attraction in Christchurch? It's a rubble at the moment.
Mm-hmm. The centre of Christchurch is slowly coming right. We've moved the yes. We've moved the War Memorial. That's getting done. You'll see that all wrapped up in plastic at the moment, and that will be emerging from there very soon. The cathedral, albeit extremely slow, something is happening there. Over by the old post office building, the front of all of the cobblestones and that's all getting redone. We couldn't do over by the old government building because that tall building there was isolation for the COVID stuff, so we sort of had to keep away from that. So we took money away from that, put it on the other side. One of the things that is good, also the borders are opening, people are coming in. I've just got some friends of ours though, have been just over to Europe, and they've been around in a few places, and people say, oh, you're from New Zealand, oh, you're still locked up. And that's what the rest of the world think, we're still locked up. We might have taken our masks off last week, but their perception is that, you know, we're doing what we've done, and we're not open for business yet. We can say it as much as we like, but it is starting to happen very slowly, albeit very slowly. One of the things which has really cheered me up the other day, I was walking down the terraces at the Strip, and there was a guy cleaning the footpath outside, I think it was Zodiac Bar. I said, how's it going? He said, mate, that convention centre is the best thing that's ever happened to us, because I am now flat out busy. Before I was with COVID. So I wandered down to the convention centre and actually got a tour through there by the CEO, which was really good. On that day, he had 350 staff working there, and he had 1,500 delegates there for 3 different conventions. Now, those people are all buying a cup of coffee or a pie or going to the toilet or getting on the bus doing it. So it's starting to happen, and this guy was saying he is so thankful for that. Now, you might say we're, in a way, we're lucky, the council's lucky, we do not own the convention centre, because it will probably never wash its face as far as money goes for how much it cost. But for Christchurch Incorporated, it's good. Now, with the Metro Sports Facility, that's going to be an international swimming event centre and indoor netball and badminton, all that sort of thing. That's why it's going on about the Commonwealth Games. That will be another piece in the puzzle that will bring people into town, as well as the stadium when it's finished. So there's lots of good things, and it's all starting to happen. We have gone around and put the pressure on people that have not been tidying up what was called gravel pits, tidy them up, put some little planter boxes out the front of them, because you say, the first impression, people waltz into town and they go, oh, what a damn shambles this is. So we're working on that, and it is working, it's changing. And also, you get corners like where the Court Theatre's going, you know where that's going in town? That's all been levelled off, it's ready to start building. So the big holes are starting to fill up even now, so it's good.
It has been frustratingly slow for all of us, because I think right at the outset the expectations were set that actually this was going to happen really quickly. There's a lot of foundations that have gone into place, a lot of pieces in the jigsaw in place. The decision about the stadium actually needed to happen to help complete part of the part of the city. And as Phil touched on, as a number of the other developments come into place, it will start making much more sense as a city. And I think one of our challenges is actually starting to change the story that we're telling ourselves about our city. It is still in a transition, and it's why it's so important that a number of these final projects are delivered with urgency, and making sure that they are delivered as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Hello, what's your stand on asset sales, please?
Asset sales, I don't support asset sales, and I think that's probably one of the things where Phil and I do differ a bit on, in terms of how other surplus land that may not be being used at the moment is decisions about how and what that is used for in the future. That sort of land, I would see much more important that the council plays a role in helping support and enable things like social housing through into housing trusts, to support and create a different housing market, if we're really going to get serious about dealing with housing.
Yeah. Last year, the council sold 1% of its surplus land assets and got $40 million for it, which is good. We won't miss it. One of them was a piece of land where I used to go to Sunday school when I was 6 down in Brighton, and it's been empty for 12 years. And it's got a road on 2 sides, and it could have a 2-bedroom house there and a 2-bedroom house there, which people would pay rates to the common good, because the more people we've got living in town, the better it is. So we could, that those sort of assets, we don't need to hang on to everything. But the crown jewels, the CCHL stuff, they're the ones that we really need to hang on because they're the ones that are giving us good return. We can get better return if we work hard with them, but not the crown jewels.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, thank you very much. I'd really like to reiterate, it's your chance to vote, so get out and vote. You've heard from your candidates. I really want to make sure, repeat again, we do get out there and vote, please. Take that chance and talk to your neighbours. They may not have been here. Get them to vote as well. You know that's what we want to look at. Our expectations are that we raise and speak for yourself and make your choices of your candidates that you've heard from today. I'd really like first to thank, again, once more, Mayor Leanne Dalziel for being here today. And I really wanted to say also thanks for Raf coming in and all the candidates coming in and supporting, especially the councillors. It's really important to hear from them, and you've had a wonderful opportunity to hear from them, and you've come and supported as your community here. The last thing I'd like to do is, it's just a personal request, and of course all out there as well from the ACG, is that outside there are some lovely people out there holding buckets, and if you could like to contribute to help support us in terms of this, just drop a coin in there. Love to hear the soft sound of the Queen dropping in, but that's what we make sure. Please support us, and again, the Avonhead Community Group has also set up a Give a Little page. If you want to have a look at that, that would be really appreciated, and it's our chance. Remember, the Avonhead Community Group's here for you. We'd love to hear from you. There's a lot of Facebook, social media there for you to contact us so we can make contact with our candidates and everyone else through this group. Thank you again for your attendance. It's been really appreciated, an amazing turnout. We really loved it. Thank you very much.